What if a company could just stop dealing with all the chaos of the open market? What if it could just become the market itself? Well, that's the wild idea behind a really powerful strategy called vertical integration. Today, we're going to dive into how businesses use this to build their very own private empires, all in the name of one thing: absolute control. So here's our plan. First, we'll hit the basics. What exactly is vertical integration? Then, we'll see how companies actually use it to control their entire production flow. We'll dig into the logic behind it, see how it's different from other strategies, and then wrap up by looking at a pretty fascinating paradox at the heart of all this power. All right, let's jump right in with the core idea. What is this strategy really all about? Forget the business jargon for a second. At its heart, vertical integration is a quest for total control. It's an attempt to bend the entire market to a single company's will. To put it simply, it's when a company just decides to stop outsourcing and start owning. Instead of dealing with a bunch of different partners for raw materials, for manufacturing, for sales, it just brings all of those stages under one roof. It's a huge shift from, hey, let's make a deal, to, nope, we're in charge here. And this quote just gets right to the point. This isn't just some business tactic. It's a complete transformation. The company stops being a player in the market and basically becomes its own private market. It replaces that whole web of handshakes and contracts with a top-down command structure that it and it alone controls. So why on earth would you go through all this trouble? Well, it's all about taking the messy, tangled chaos of the real world, with its crazy price swings and unreliable partners, and swapping it out for the clean, predictable order of an internal system. It's really an attempt to tame the Wild West of commerce. Okay, so if that's the what and the why, let's get into the how. How does a company actually go about building this empire and taking control of its whole production flow? Well, it usually happens in one of two directions. A company can move upstream, toward the source of its materials by buying its suppliers. That's called backward integration. Or it can move downstream toward the customer, buying up its distributors or even its own stores. That's forward integration. One secures the very beginning of the line and the other secures the very end. And this lays out the whole chain perfectly. So backward integration is about swallowing up steps 1 and 2, controlling the very origin of your product. Forward integration is about taking over steps 3 and 4, controlling exactly how your product gets into your customer's hands. And the ultimate goal? Yeah, own it all. When a company does this really effectively, it almost stops being a company and becomes something more, like a self-contained organism. It literally absorbs external businesses and makes them internal organs, all working together not as partners, but as parts of a single unified body. But let's be real for a second. This is a huge, ambitious, and incredibly expensive thing to do. So what's the logic? Why go to all the trouble of building an empire when you could just, play in the market like everybody else? Well, on paper, the business case looks pretty good. You get absolute control over your entire process. You can slash costs by cutting out all the middlemen, you can boost efficiency, and you can guarantee the quality of your product from the very first screw to the final sale. No more haggling, no more surprise price hikes from your suppliers, none of it. But if you look a little closer, let's say a more cynical logic starts to appear. As this quote suggests, efficiency becomes the perfect public excuse, the ethical mask, for what's often just a raw drive toward monopoly. It's how you justify grabbing massive amounts of power by just calling it good business. Sometimes the best way to really get a handle on an idea is to look at what it isn't. So let's contrast the strategy of going deep with some other ways that companies try to grow. So you've probably heard of horizontal integration, right? That's when a company buys its competitors to get more market share. You can think of it as expanding sideways. Vertical integration is totally different. It's all about going deeper into your own supply chain. One is like a land grab for territory. The other is a power grab for the very structure of production itself. And this right here shows the fundamental clash in philosophy. A normal company relies on the market. It uses contracts, it adapts to change. The vertically integrated firm, on the other hand, wants to abolish the market. It wants to replace all that negotiation with simple commands and swap out flexibility for absolute, total certainty. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important section. Building an empire of total control sounds amazing, but it comes with a hidden cost, a really deep paradox that can threaten the very stability it was designed to create in the first place. And here it is. Here's the paradox. In its obsessive quest for perfect internal control, the company ends up building these huge walls around itself. Sure, everything inside might work like a clock, but it's completely cut off from the outside world. It's blind to new trends, new ideas, and especially new competition. This quote absolutely nails the danger. The system's greatest strength, its perfect self-contained coherence, becomes its fatal flaw. This pursuit of order collapses into what the source calls a tyranny of closure. The fortress becomes so secure that it turns into a prison, unable to breathe, unable to adapt. So this is the ultimate trade-off. In the mission to get rid of all risk and all uncertainty, a company can accidentally crush the very things it needs to survive long-term: innovation, creativity, and the ability to adapt. It achieves perfect stability, but it might just be at the cost of its own future. And that leaves us with this final question to think about. Is vertical integration a brilliant strategy for mastering your craft and delivering a perfect product? Or is it just a slick path to monopoly, where control becomes the only thing that matters? The line between those two? Well, it might be a lot finer than you think.